He humiliated me in front of everyone. That's what people think this story is about. But it's not. Because by the time that happened, the damage had already been done. Hey, this is Breakup Diaries. And this story is about what happens when the person you love pretends you don't exist. Because if I'm being honest, it didn't start in that meeting room. It started the night she told me we couldn't exist. Not publicly. Not where anyone could see us. I remember exactly how she said it. Calm, controlled, like it wasn't even a difficult decision. This stays between us, Elliot, it has too. And the way she looked at me when she said it. It didn't feel like rejection. It felt like trust. Like she was letting me into something private. Something real. So I agreed. Of course I did. Because at that point, I already cared more than I should have. We worked in the same space. Same building, same floor. Different roles, but close enough that we saw each other every day. And that's where it became complicated. Because in private, she was different. Softer, warmer. There were moments that felt real. Late nights, quiet conversations. The kind that makes you believe something is growing. But the moment we stepped outside of that space, everything changed. She became distant. Professional. Untouchable. Like none of it existed. Like I didn't exist. At first, I told myself it made sense. She had more to lose. Her reputation, her position. I understood that. Or at least I told myself I did. What I didn't understand was how easy it was for her to switch. How natural it felt for her to pretend. And looking back now, that should have been the first warning. If you only saw her at work, you would never believe me. Clara Whitmore was the kind of woman people respected before she even spoke. Confident, precise, untouchable. The room adjusted to her presence. People listened differently when she talked. And around her, I became careful. Measured. Like I had to earn space that didn't belong to me. But that wasn't the version I knew. Because behind closed doors, she was different. Not softer in a weak way. Just real. She laughed more. She listened. She let her guard down in ways no one else ever saw. And those moments, they felt rare. Like something I was lucky to have access to. We kept it hidden. Always. No messages that could be traced. No conversations in open spaces. No lingering looks when people were around. At first, it felt exciting. Like we were protecting something important. Something worth keeping private. But over time, it started to feel different. Because the line between private and invisible became harder to ignore. There were moments at work where she would walk past me like I wasn't there. Not even a glance. Not even acknowledgement. And I would tell myself it was necessary. That this was the price of being with someone like her. Someone who had more to lose. But then the small things started. She would interrupt me in meetings. Correct me in front of others. Rephrase what I said like it needed fixing. People laughed sometimes. Not loudly, but enough. And every time it happened, I felt something shift. Not all at once. Just slightly. Like something underneath the surface was starting to crack. The meeting wasn't supposed to be important. At least not for me. It was just another internal review. Senior staff, a few presentations, nothing unusual. But I had worked on something that mattered. Something I believed in. And for the first time in a while, I felt ready to speak. When it was my turn, I started explaining my idea. Clear, direct, controlled. Everything was going fine. Until she interrupted me. Not abruptly. Just enough to take control of the room. "Let me clarify something here," she said. And just like that, the attention shifted. She started rephrasing what I had already explained, but in a way that made it sound incomplete. Like I had missed something obvious. I tried to step back in, to finish my point, but she didn't let me. She kept going, breaking it down, correcting things that weren't wrong. Then she paused, looked at me, and said it. "Maybe next time, take a little more time to understand the basics before presenting." There was a small reaction in the room. A few quiet laughs. Some people looked down. Others just stayed still. No one said anything. And in that moment, she didn't look at me like someone she knew. She didn't hesitate. Didn't soften it. Didn't acknowledge anything between us. She looked at me like I didn't belong there. Like I was just another mistake to correct. And I stood there, trying to process how someone who knew me so closely could make me feel like nothing in front of everyone. I didn't react. Not in that moment. I finished what I could. Sat down. Kept my expression steady. Because reacting would have made it worse. At least that's what I told myself. But something changed after that meeting. Not loudly. Not immediately. Just quietly. People started looking at me differently. Not directly, but enough to notice. Conversations became shorter. Interactions became more formal. Like something about me had shifted in their eyes. And the worst part wasn't what she said. It was what no one else did. No one questioned it. No one followed up. No one checked if I was okay. It was like the room had agreed, without saying anything, that I deserved it. Later that day, I saw her again. Same composure. Same control. Like nothing had happened. Like that moment didn't exist. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just about protecting the secret anymore. It was about control. She didn't just keep me hidden. She positioned me. And when it mattered, she chose her image over everything else. Over me. Over what we had. And standing there, watching her move through the day like everything was normal, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. I wasn't just invisible. I was expendable. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed time. Not to calm down, but to understand what had just happened. Because part of me still wanted to believe there was a reason. A justification. Something that made it make sense. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. That moment wasn't accidental. It wasn't pressure. It wasn't miscommunication. It was a choice. Days passed, and nothing changed. No acknowledgement. No conversation. No attempt to explain it. So I stopped waiting. When I finally spoke to her, it wasn't emotional. It was direct. What was that? She didn't hesitate. It was a meeting. That was it. No apology. No shift in tone. Nothing. I looked at her, trying to understand how someone who shared something real with me could reduce it to nothing so easily. "You didn't have to do that," I said. She exhaled slightly. "This is bigger than us." And just like that, everything became clear. There was no us. Not in the way I thought. Not in the way I felt. What we had only existed when it didn't cost her anything. The moment it did, she let it go without hesitation. And I stood there realizing something I should have understood a long time ago. I didn't lose her in that meeting. I just finally saw where I stood. I didn't expose her. That's what most people expect when they hear this story. Some big moment. Some kind of revenge. But that's not what happened. Because the truth is, it wasn't just about her. It was about me. About what I was willing to accept. And what I was. I kept working. Same place, same role. Same people. But something inside me had shifted. Not loudly. Just permanently. I stopped trying to prove myself in rooms that had already decided who I was. I stopped explaining things to people who weren't listening. And most importantly, I stopped making space for someone who treated me like I didn't exist. Over time, the truth started to surface. Not because I forced it, but because patterns don't stay hidden forever. People noticed things. Connections formed. Conversations happened. And slowly, her image started to crack. Not completely, but enough. Some people reached out to me later. Said they always thought something felt off. Said they noticed how she treated me. Said they didn't agree with what happened. I listened, nodded, let them speak. But none of it changed anything. Because when it mattered, they said nothing. And that was the part that stayed with me. Not the meeting, not the humiliation, but the silence that followed it. The people who watched said nothing at the time. Some of them called me later. I did not find that helpful.